Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Mountains We Climb. This is a series where we dive into people's journeys of overcoming challenges and adversity in their lives so that we can understand what is really possible and what it really takes. I'm your host, Jordan Kilpatrick-Smith, and in this week's episode, we'll be joined by Jessica Crombie and explore her journey of starting a career in fire service. Jess is a mom of 3 young children, an avid athlete, and we'll be discussing what it takes to beat the odds. Jess, thanks for being here with me.
Thanks for having me.
So where does your story start?
My story starts about 2 years ago. I worked for the largest food and beverage company in Canada, and I was really climbing that corporate ladder. I was a good girl. I went to university. I checked off all those boxes that society asked me to check off. And I found myself about 7 years into a career that was very unfulfilling. I'd go to work, I'd come home, I'd go to work, I'd come home. And the stress that I was bringing home with me, it didn't feel right. But again, you grow up in society that tells you that you've made it. This is what you have been put here to do. Climb the corporate ladder. You're doing a great job. And one day I was driving through town and I saw a billboard that said they were recruiting for volunteer firefighters in my area. And something about it made me stop and think. I went home, I looked it up, and I thought, you know what, this is something that kind of speaks to me. It sounds kind of fun. At the time, I had no idea what it involved. And I applied, went through the interview process, was hired on, and started recruit training. I would say about very early on in my recruit training, which was 7 months, by the way.
Sorry, Jess, I just want to jump in here. In that grind where you go into work day in and day out, you come home, You're unfulfilled. What does that really feel like? Like, how do you know that you're unfulfilled?
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest thing is waking up and not being excited to start your day. So you wake up without intention. You wake up because you have to, and you're going to work for a paycheck. You're waiting for that break. It's my 15-minute break. It's my half an hour lunch, another 15-minute break. Life isn't meant to be strung along until your next break. And that's really where I felt myself unfulfilled. In the office, it was like living in Twilight Zone. All these people were so happy in their cubicles.
Yeah.
I always felt like an odd person out. And with every promotion, with every new leap and every new opportunity, I found people around me saying, wow, Jess, you're so lucky. They love you here. Sky's the limit for you. And there was always this tiny little icky feeling inside of me. And it's very difficult to describe, but there was something that told me it wasn't right. And yeah, you know what? I'm really good at my job. I hit my sales targets. You know what? I actually exceed my sales targets. I was the #1 sales rep in all of Ontario. But I went home and I didn't feel fulfilled. It kind of felt empty. It's kind of difficult to describe, but it's a little feeling inside your gut.
Yeah. Just that the little bit of emptiness, that lack of passion, that lack of, it's not, I get to wake up, but rather I have to wake up. You dread the alarm. It's,
right. Like you're groaning and smacking the alarm every single morning. Whereas now, I wake up before my alarm. I wake up and look at the clock and think, oh my God, is it 5 a.m. yet?
Yeah.
Like I can't wait.
Yeah. Big difference there. Okay. So you're driving along and you were still employed at this point, right?
Yeah, I was still employed, very much so, very much in that go to work, come home, never ending Groundhog Day. And something told me that I needed to go and pursue this opportunity within the volunteer division. And as I begun, it was very, very obvious to me that something clicked, and it was like, holy moly, you know what, this volunteer thing, this isn't a volunteer position. This isn't, me going and putting in 2 hours a week at the library. This is a very serious role in my community. And I remember very clearly, it was my first performance review with my training officer, my captain. And he's a very serious, stern man, and very paramilitary, if you will. And I'm sitting there and he's giving me a fantastic review in his very choppy way of speech. And I'm just sitting there with my hands clasped together saying, yes, sir, yes, sir. And at the end of my review, he stops and he said, that concludes our review, Crombie. And he said, but I would like to say something else to you. I said, yes, sir. And his expression completely softened, and he looked at me and he leaned across the table and he pointed his finger in my face and he said, Crombie, you are going to make one hell of a full-time firefighter one day, whether you realize it or not. Literally, Jordan, that moment changed my life. When people say like I had a life-changing moment, that moment really shattered everything that I thought was my foundation. There's security and comfort in having a steady job where you're performing well. And it was a harsh reality in that one moment to realize that everything I had worked for, all of my university career, all of my career at this company really did not fulfill me. And yes, you know what, I learned a lot of fantastic skills and attributes that I've now been able to take on to fire service. But it's a very harsh reality when something so clearly is telling you what you're doing, you need to stop because this is your calling. I know saying the word calling is so corny. I actually hate myself for even saying that out loud. But it was so clear to me that I had to do this. This was my calling.
Yeah, because as much as the word calling may be corny, it is a fact of life that there are callings, right? Yeah. Can you take me through that moment for you? Like he's sitting there, he's telling you are going to make one hell of a firefighter, and this like shook the foundation of your life. Like, what were you thinking in that moment?
It did, because again, it's that security piece. I had a very healthy salary. I had a company car. I had bonuses. And that's what you build your life off of, right? And your career often becomes a huge part of your identity. And if you're a driven, successful person, an overachiever like I am, stopping that freight train of achievement is extremely difficult. It almost feels like failure because you put so much time into it that to stop almost feels like giving up. And yet there was something about fire service. There was something about this training. There was something about this community that I could not live my life without now. And I think my captain really saw that passion in me and saw how eager I was, and how if we had to read one chapter, I would go home and read 5 chapters. And then the next day, if we had to read the next chapter, I would reread those 5 chapters and then another 3 chapters. I got to the point where I was reciting IFSTA, our textbook, in front of the officers because I loved it. If there was something about fire behavior that I didn't know, I would Google everything I could because it was fascinating to me. And what an incredible challenge. And I think that's the other piece too, is that at my other job, I wasn't challenged anymore. It became easy, right? Doing well, I'd figured out the formula. That kind of led to that unfulfillment too.
So how do you think fulfillment and challenge go together? What is the relationship between that?
I think overcoming challenges enables fulfillment, but I think that it depends on the challenge, right? The larger the mountain, the better the view is from the top, right?
Absolutely.
How suiting. But, and as an overachiever, as I said, I kind of have this sickness about me, right? Where I'm always hungry for more. And that piece of fulfillment is always something ahead of me. And once I achieve that, that carrot just moves a little further away, right? Which I don't think necessarily is the worst thing. I think that's how people become champions. Truly, I think that never-ending quest, that never-ending and just relentless voice in your head that pushes you forward is something that you need to stop and listen to. And I think that society these days, mediocrity often becomes the norm. And we kind of settle. We settle. I worked with a lot of people that settled. And I think that's why sometimes I felt like an outsider because, you know, when I talked to them and I asked them about their interests outside of work, they would say things like shopping. And for me, what gets you excited? You know, it's difficult. But I also understand that I'm a strong personality. So
yeah. So you mentioned there that we settle for mediocrity. And that really is the comfort zone, right?
It is, absolutely.
So how do you muster the strength to overcome the things that keep us within the comfort zone? And what do you feel those things are that keep us within the comfort zone? And then how do you find the strength, or where does that come from to get out of that?
Well, I would say that what keeps us in the comfort zone most often is fear. Fear, and then fear pushes us away from that challenge, and then contentment and security keeps us in that mediocrity. Challenge often, if not most times, in my experience, leads to failure. And it depends on what you do with that failure that turns you either into a winner or a loser. And, you know, the old saying, like, what is it? When things get tough, the tough get going, something like that.
Yes.
I find that when presented with a challenge and you fail, and especially if you put a lot of effort into that challenge, if you fail, it's a lot easier to turn around and give up and go back to that place of comfort. It takes a lot more courage and a lot more mental toughness, a lot more grit to take that lesson, be thankful for that lesson, learn what you can from that lesson, and push on. Because we are our own biggest limiting factors. Us telling ourselves that we cannot do it, that's the only thing holding us back. I really honestly believe that if you put your mind to it, if you work harder than every other person, you can make anything happen. I really believe that. I said to someone the other day, this whole experience that I've been through with fire service, I really believe that if I wanted to go to the moon, I could definitely do that. I would just devote every single waking second to going to the moon.
And that's a huge piece right there, right? Is Are you going to learn from these challenges, or are you going to back away from them? Are you going to overcome the challenge and grow as a result, or are you going to let it defeat you and keep you small?
That's right.
Is this important enough for you that you're willing to put in the really hard, and I think not just hard, but uncomfortable work that comes along with it, right?
That's right. And I think that finding comfort, being uncomfortable, is something that people need to strive to do. Even just to relate it to fitness. You only grow when you are in uncomfortable situations. Your muscles only grow when they're put under pressure. If you never push that limit, your muscle will never grow. Your cardio will never get better. And unless you really revel in that suffering, and I don't like to use the word suffering because it sounds so dramatic, but that's really what it is.
Yeah.
Is that we need to really seek out that suffering. And here I am, I sound like David Goggins right now, but that's David really Goggins. Love that guy. He's legitimately my hero. Yeah, that's where we need to find ourselves, and that's where we need to go every single day to become stronger, right? And really work on that mental toughness piece, because that's where we find the strength within ourselves to move forward through whatever adversity you're in.
Absolutely. Have you heard of Anti-Fragile?
No.
So I forget what his name is. He wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. Nassim Nicholas Taleb, I think that's how you say his name. It's called Anti-Fragile, Things That Gain from Disorder. And in this book, he talks about a concept of how the term fragile means that as we add disorder or chaos to something, it gets worse, right? So you look at a glass, you start shaking it around, it's going to break. We often think that robust is the opposite of fragile, where we add disorder to it and it's fine. But he says what's actually the opposite is anti-fragile, which is where you add disorder and as a result, it becomes stronger, not weaker. And I think that this concept is so applicable to our lives, right? And so you mentioned fitness there. It's in that suffering, in that disorder, in that chaos, in that pain, that we actually become stronger.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that adding chaos is really interesting, because often the challenges that we faced they're not a linear path, right? So you're heading down a linear path, you set a plan. Often to execute that plan, you have to zig and you have to zag. And a lot of times on those zigs, you're moving away from your perceived endpoint and you think, what am I doing? This is not right. I'm now failing. But you have to keep going forward. It's about perpetual motion, right? 1 inch at a time.
I love that. The concept of zigging and zagging, and Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so coming back to your story here, you were working in this corporation. You said, oh my gosh, I'm going to go sign up for fire. You went through all the training. The chief was like, Jess, you are going to make an incredible firefighter. What happened after that?
Yeah, so I graduated recruit training. I started on the trucks, and it was even clearer to me once I started responding, riding the trucks, going to fires, going to medicals, that this is really for me. And I remember coming home one day and talking to my husband, and I said to him, and this is a hard conversation to have with your family. It was, listen, this is really for me, and I really want to pursue this as a career. And to ask that of your spouse, to ask to give up the company car, to give up the salary for something that is not, there's no guaranteed immediate success. That's a lot to ask. And it's a lot to even muster the strength to ask. Even to tell my father that, who had pushed me as a young woman, you go to university, you get a corporate job, you work towards 6 figures, and then you will be successful and happy. For me to switch careers was really turning my back on that mantra. And it took a lot of courage and strength, and I'm very lucky my husband supported me. And, you know, just the other day, actually, I found my resignation letter to the company I work for. And I remember signing it, and really, before I scanned it, I remember staring at it for 10 minutes and thinking, what am I about to do? First of all, I'm giving up this security. But second of all, I'm a woman trying to get into a male-dominated profession. You know, am I kidding myself here? What am I up against? I think that the volunteer training and being on the trucks really made me realize that, yeah, I can do this job. Yes, I am an equal. And it was that confidence that really enabled me to make that decision. So I did hand in my resignation, much to their shock, and I went back to school. And I became certified. I had to upgrade all my licenses to his DZ so I can drive the trucks. I had to get advanced medical training, and it took about 1.5 years. There's standardized testing in Ontario called OFAI. Any firefighter that's listening to this right now is literally cringing when I say those letters. It's standardized candidate testing that every candidate has to go through in order to apply to many of the fire departments, I should say, in Ontario. And it's notoriously extremely difficult. At one point of time, it was like rumored to be like 96% fail rate. I don't know if that's a rumor, but I can tell you that I failed once. So, and when I went in with like 5 guys one day, none of us passed. So I can tell you it's pretty difficult.
So is this a written exam?
So there's different levels. So there's 3 stages, but it's all broken out into different components. There's a written, there's a treadmill, basically like a VO2 max. There's a FPAT, which is a firefighter physical aptitude test, which is like a course basically. And then the second part of stage 3 is broken into 2 parts in the technical skills. So there's a roof ventilation skill. There's deploying a roof ladder, there's hoisting tools, there's a medical, and they want things done very specifically. So although you may be very proficient, if you do not do it to their specific standard, then you fail and you have to come back and try again and pay your money and blah, blah, blah. So I guess where I'm going with this is it's extremely challenging to get into fire service. It takes a lot of mental toughness because you're going to be told no 1,000 times or more. And when you go to OFAI, or if you are lucky enough to get an interview, if you see other candidates, or if you're working towards fire service with a group, you usually find people and you work towards it together. The people that you're working with are just as passionate as you. They are just as fit as you. Their resumes are just as stacked as you. And it's like the competition is so fierce. Like I want to use like the gladiator analogy. Like I would go into a ring and slaughter as many of them as I had to get this job. That's how difficult it is. And you have to really want it that bad. So it can be tough. Yeah. And I had a lot of moments going through where I said to myself, is this something that I can do? Can I outlast this? And that's kind of where I found myself for 2 years, failing at OFAI once was challenging. Waking up every single day, doing I have full set of gear here, a full SCBA, I'd be on that treadmill killing myself. It's a challenge, super challenging. And so I should tell you too, I went through an interview process. I was very fortunate. As soon as I finished all my OFAI, about a year and a half into this journey, I had an interview with a department close to where I live that I was elated. Everyone was like, oh my God, Jess, I can't believe you got an interview. Like, usually takes people 5 years. Like, this is crazy. And I went to the first interview and I passed. I thought, oh my God. No way I passed the first interview. And to prepare for that interview takes months. And I should say, applications, when there's an opening at a fire department, thousands of people apply. And I'm not just saying thousands of people apply, I'm saying thousands of qualified candidates apply. Every single one of these people checks every single box on their list. So what sets you apart? So to make it to an interview is already a huge accomplishment. So I made it to the first and I got to the second. And oh my God, I rocked it. I passed the second interview. I thought, holy crap, this is a slam dunk. After the interview, we had behavioral testing. No problem. I work great with others. I love teamwork. I'm your girl. Behavioral test done. Psychological testing. It's like a 700 multiple choice question. Yeah, no problem. Like, will you kill someone? No. Like, it wasn't that difficult. And I got to the end. We're all sitting there. There's 22 of us sitting in this room. They're going to take 19. And I'm looking around. I'm like, oh, damn, there's only another girl. There's one other girl here. I feel like her and I might have this in the bank here because we have fought hard to be here. I wait and I wait and I wait. And everyone's telling me, like, we're already buying champagne. It's like a big deal. And I get the email. You have not been selected. It's hard for me to describe to you what that feeling felt like. Having worked so hard, and to your viewers, like, I really can't even describe to you how hard I worked for this. It was excruciating. I would wake up every day, physically train. I would be up late every single night, reading, studying. I knew everything about those chiefs' families when I went in for the interview. I knew everything.
On top of having 3 young children.
On top of having 3 young children, yeah, under 5. And when I got that email, I was at my girlfriend's house and I literally fell to the ground and I sobbed for 3 hours straight. I didn't move. We were in the middle of her horse paddock. I laid in the middle of her horse paddock and sobbed. And she, not having gone through fire service or understanding what that meant, had no idea what was going on with me. So I picked up the phone and I called one of my buddies, my buddy Dan. And Dan cried on the phone. It makes me want to cry right now, actually. Yeah, because he got it. I have been working my ass off. I woke up every single day, and I still wake up every single day with being the best candidate possible, the best firefighter possible. That type of dedication is very, very difficult to maintain for a very long time. And I've been maintaining it now for a year and a half, every single day. There is no time for television. There is no time for fun. And to have them say no to me was crushing. I have learned throughout life's experiences that if you work hard, you will succeed. And I worked hard. So where was my success then? I was owed that, I felt. There was no way that those other candidates put in as much as I did. So that was a huge moment in my life.
Pick up the pieces after that, because to me, that sounds like something that would totally not just knock the wind out of your sails, but to capsize the boat and be like,
yeah, it did.
Because you gave up your career, you put everything on the line on top of trying to raise your children. And then to put everything in for a year and a half, that's something like 500 days straight to get to the final process. You know what? It got to the point where that horrible word doubt started to creep up. And that was something that I'd never really considered before. That horrible word doubt, where I started to question myself. Have I made a huge mistake?
Have I made a huge mistake? What have I done to my family? What have I done to my career? Maybe I am not cut out for fire service. Maybe I'm not what they're looking for. I should say too, and I hate to actually even mention this part of the story because I think it sends the wrong message. But before my interviews, I went and I visited stations at my department. And I should mention my department that I work out of right now, it's a composite department. So I'm on the volunteer division, but we also have a career full-time division. It's known to be a very hard department to work for, a lot of grit. And in order to be respected and as a woman, you got to earn it. You got to put in that work. You got to prove to them that you are worthy of that spot. You are not just some Barbie there dressed in bunker gear. You have their back and you will save their life and you will sacrifice your own, and you are equally capable of doing so. And I was used to that type of camaraderie. You know what, Jess, you earn it. You are just as good as any other guy here. You are one of the guys. And when I went around and I visited these stations, the first station that I went to, I walked into and I brought treats, as you should. And I knocked on the door and I said, "Hey, I'm Jess. I've got an interview with this department next week. I just wanted to come and talk to you guys." And the guy stared at me and grit his teeth and he let me in. I thought, "Oh, that's kind of weird." That's not what I'm used to. Especially because I got treats. Like, come on, man. Yeah. So I went in and he led me in. All the guys turned around. They're all sitting at a table. Not one of them got up. And I explained myself and they said, "Oh, hey," and they turned back around. And just then a captain walked in. And you can tell a captain, he's got, anyways. So he walked in stuff. And I said, "Yes, he does. That's right." Epaulets. So he walked in and I said, "Hello, sir. My name is Jessica Crombie." And I shook out my hand. Put my hand out for a handshake. This is pre-COVID, by the way. Put my hand out for a handshake. And he stared at me and he said, "I don't believe women should be in fire service." And he turned around and walked away. And never in my life, Jordan, have I felt inequality that way. And that was a weird moment for me because my entire career so far in fire service had been me completely denying that that exists. I kept saying to myself, no, these women that complain, they're just not as tough as me. Or you know what, maybe these women just don't like, they don't want it bad enough, right? That shocked me. And you know what, the same vibe was at all the other stations. So going into these interviews, I knew that. So and for me to pass, in addition to that knowledge going in, I was like, you know what, this is it. I'm going to go in and I'm going to set the record straight. Women can work hard. We deserve to be here. Let me be that person. I'll take that challenge on. Not that I have anything to prove, but you can shit on me all you want. I can take it. Bring it on. Let me show you that I will work harder than you. You will not be more passionate than me. You will not be earlier than me. You will not be climbing up on that truck and loading that hose faster than me. And then at the end of the day, for them to say no, and I don't know why they said no, and it's not my job to try to suss it out. And you know, I do not think that it was because I was a woman. I want to make that very clear. But it was a huge blow to me. And I really, you know, I'm not going to lie, it took me months. And when I say months, I want to say probably about half a year. My confidence was really shaken, and I've always been an extremely confident person, extremely confident. It was difficult, you know, especially because I'm already doing the job. I'm already driving the fire truck. I'm already responding to calls. I'm already going to structure fires. It was difficult. And then COVID hit. And that in itself is a whole nother podcast because Let me tell you, when COVID hit, it was, oh my God, look, second strike, Jess. Now you're trying to get hired on during a pandemic. Now you're unemployed during a pandemic. You got all your schooling. Now it's time to apply. Sorry, no one's hiring because of COVID. Now you're just an unemployed woman. That was difficult. That was a big pride piece for me. And I probably wallowed there for a month or two thinking, what have I done? What am I going to do? How can I work any harder when I'm literally killing myself in the gym and I'm reading at night until I fall asleep, when I am at my station every single day? How do I do more? How do I be more? and I had exhausted all of my avenues, right? So yeah, it was a dark time, I'm not going to lie. It was one of those moments, like we talked about, where you either turn back or you put your head down and you grit your teeth and you freaking move forward. And I decided to move forward, and I gave it all that I had. And I have been. It's probably about 4 months ago that I made that decision and thought, you know what? No, I will not be defeated by this. It's only one department, but it's what it meant to me to have made it that far, to have so many people that I respect around me telling me, Jess, you are meant for this profession. How have they not hired you? That was difficult.
Yeah. And one of the things that I would like to point out here, because, you know, the people listening to this cannot see you and will have no idea about this, because since we haven't mentioned this, that actually, will you tell us about your fire fit and your performance on that? Because I think that that's also a really important thing to mention here.
Yeah. So, well, I should start with, I've always been an avid athlete, and I was a competitor in CrossFit for a very long time. I actually competed while I was pregnant with twins in CrossFit. I'm like a totally crazy person. I get it. But I love the intensity of that sport. And I've been doing CrossFit for probably like 10 years, which makes me sound super old. But when I graduated my recruit class in my department, I knew that they had a fire fit team. And I knew because I'd seen them training once at the training center. And we have a big training tower there. It's flights of stairs that you run. And I knew they were all full-time guys. And they're all, you know, grizzled, hard firefighters that have these huge hose packs and are running these stairs and pulling the dummy. And I looked at it and I was like, oh yeah, that is 100% my kind of crazy. I love that. I want that. And when I graduated, I told the guys in my recruit class, there's 22 of us, and they were all guys. And I said, boys, I want to be on that fire fit team. And they all looked at me and said, Jess, come on. First of all, there's no volunteers on that team. And second of all, they don't have any females there. They're like, you sound a little crazy. So one day I saw them again. I walked outside, and it was one of the captains. I said, hey, I'm Jess. I'm from the Volleys. I want to run this tower with you. And he looked at me like I was crazy, but he's like, all right, girl, let's see what you got. And right there, I picked up the hose bundle and I ran the tower, and I ran back down. And he was like, oh my God, you are crazy. So yeah, no, so I joined the team. I think it was like a month later, we went to regionals, and I qualified for nationals, and nationals came, which was in Oshawa. And I went to cheer on the guys. I was dealing with a bit of a shoulder injury at the time, but yeah, to qualify for nationals, it was like unbelievable. And I have so much respect for those girls. Like, they are unbelievable. They are really unbelievable. You know, you're talking about like legitimately semi-professional athletes. Like, they are weighing their food. They're talking about like specific increments of carbs and like measuring their sleep. You know, like, I'm a mom of 3. Okay. Like, yeah. Like, I'm making PB&J while I'm like mopping the floor at the same time. Yeah. So yeah, I have so much respect for them, but yeah, no, it's an amazing sport. I can't wait to continue.
Yeah. Cool. I feel like that's really important to understand, that, you know, as much as you're saying, yeah, I'm going out and training every day, I think a lot of people have no idea the intensity that sure. occurs at, right? So to get to qualifying for Fire Fit Nationals is an incredible accomplishment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, people that don't train with me, if they walk into my gym right now, so I've got a gym out back in our shop. If you walked into my gym right now, and a lot of this, looking back now, it seems kind of ridiculous, but this is what it took for me to get through. So I would go into my gym. I don't know if you've heard of Eric Thomas, but I'd be listening to Eric Thomas and his prescription. I hope that your listeners will go and look him up. He's an inspirational speaker. And I would blast him on my speakers. He'd be screaming at me, and I would be lifting, and I'd be doing pull-ups, staring, and I've mounted above my pull-up bar a fire helmet. And underneath it, in big Sharpie letters, I've written, how bad do you want it? and I do pull-ups until I can't anymore. And then I go over and I start lifting, and scrolled across my mirrors are quotes from people that inspire me. Show me your discipline. Show me your character. Don't ask why me, say try me. Just over and over. You know, every champion was once an opponent or somebody who just didn't give up. Right? So to walk into my gym, if you don't train with me, it looks like I'm a complete psychopath. But that's the type of intensity that I had to take into every single day, everything I do. Work with intention towards the goal. It wasn't just some frivolous, I want to be a firefighter. No, I need to be the best firefighter to apply. You know, I'm up against NHL athletes applying to these positions, and I'm not joking when I say that. The last place I applied, I was up against 4 OHL players, 2 NHL players, and I think it was 3 CFL players. How do I compete against that type of physical prowess, right? It just takes dedication and that armored mind, as Goggins would say.
And you mentioned, I'm kind of circling back here, but you mentioned throughout this process and these crushing defeats and no's and
right,
all of the barriers, the roadblocks that happen, to effectively turn these negatives, these things that take the wind out of your sails, into fuel for you that then pushed you forward, right? What goes on in your mind to allow that to happen? How do you do that?
Well, you know, it got to a weird point, Jordan, because once I got that no from that department, I had already exhausted all of my, here's what is within my control. Okay, so physical fitness in my control. That's in my lane. I can work on that. There is no excuse for me not to be at my peak performance. My studying, I can study and know everything about that department. I can study and know everything about fire service, everything about being a firefighter, every skill. I can go to my station. I can throw ladders for 20 hours if I want. There is no reason that I can't be perfect at that. When I'm studying for interviews, memorize everything about the department, memorize everything about every single truck. What tools do they have on their trucks? When were their trucks purchased? Even the nitty-gritty stupid shit that they're never going to ask me. What's your mutual aid like? How does your dispatch system work? What tools do you prefer for forcible entry? How exactly do you like your hose flakes? The stupid stuff that doesn't even matter. I would obsess over. But when I got the no, I had already made myself, in my mind, perfect in all of those lanes. And I got to a point where I thought, but I can't improve. This isn't fair because I can't improve. I can't be any fitter than I am. I can't know more than I'd already know about this. I am already at my peak physical and mental performance. And it was a huge realization to me that maybe I just wasn't a good fit for that department. It doesn't matter how hard you try, sometimes you fail. And I had never, luckily, I guess I should say fortunately, I'd never experienced that before. If I'd failed before, there was always an excuse. There's always something that I could look at that I could say to myself, you know what? I was lazy in this aspect. You know what? I was just mediocre in this aspect. No, there was nothing I could find. What I turned to was my physical fitness. You know what I started saying to myself? You know what? If I only looked a little bigger, and how silly does this sound? But if I only looked a little bigger, would I get a second glance? Because as a woman, they judge you, and I get that, and that's fine. What if and you know, I'm a very lean athlete. What if I had 30 pounds? And, you know, I did a lot of research on steroids. I'm not going to lie with you. At the end of the day, I decided not to. But I was in a point of desperation where I would do anything to get that one up. So yeah, in answer to your question, I guess, once I decided and I came to that realization that, you know what, no, I understand how to better myself. I understand what mediocre looks like. And I'm not that. It was just having the faith and the strength, because sometimes that zig and that zag, in order to get back to that original linear line, it's got to be a leap of faith. And you just got to have the balls to say, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to do this hell or high water. If this kills me, then I'll die. I'm going to go swinging, man.
How badly do you want this, right?
How bad do you want it? I look at that phrase every single day. Every single day I look at that. How bad do you want it? Do you just kind of want it? Or do you really, really want this? Eric Thomas has an amazing little speech people should look up. It's basically about, when you want it more than you want to breathe, then you'll be successful. And the first time I heard that, I honestly cried in my car. And, I'm talking a lot about crying. I'm like not a person that cries, by the way. But it really spoke to me because I thought that is a level of dedication. I need to be willing to give up almost everything, all my creature comforts for this.
Yeah. So to face crushing defeat, COVID-19, and discrimination, what came next in your story?
A turning point for me was that I got a job. I got a job in construction. And I got this job in construction, and it also enabled me to respond to a second volunteer station. So not only was I carrying a pager for my home station, but I also was carrying a pager for their second station. During the day, my boss allowed me to leave. He was actually also a captain at this station, so I was very fortunate. And at this second station, I found incredible mentorship. Absolutely incredible mentorship. People that really valued me there, and they gave me incredible opportunities. We got a brand new truck in. Jess, we're gonna go driving. I'm gonna get you signed off on this truck. It's a brand new truck. It's like a freaking spaceship compared to my truck in my station. These people really trusted me and they had value in me. And I should say that captain who way back when looked at me and put his finger in my face and said, "You're going to be an incredible firefighter." He was a captain at this station. And through him, I have found so much guidance, so much confidence, because he really believes in me. And that was a huge turning point for me. It was a low point after I got the no. And I thought, well, now no one's ever going to hire me because no one's hiring during COVID. And I'm never going to find a job because who's hiring during COVID? I started this new job in construction, working with my hands. That really appeals to me. And then I also started to respond to this station. I started training with them. I started responding to calls with them. I was driving the truck at calls. It was a huge confidence booster for me. And it really gave me that feeling again of no. You know what? This department just really fucked up by not taking me. To be honest, they fucked up bad. I'm a really good firefighter. These people value me. You should always go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. And I really felt that at this station. And this newfound sense of camaraderie, these new friends that I was making that were behind me every step of the way. Jess, you need help on that roof prop? I'll come out on my Saturday. And we will take every single busted up piece of plywood from your construction site. We're going to nail it to that roof prop, and you are going to sit there with a fire axe, and you are going to smash the shit out of it until you get it right. Until you're fast enough. That was really a huge turning point for me. It gave me the confidence and relit that fire that was critical to me forging on and not giving up like so many others do in their quest for fire service. So yeah, that was a huge turning point for me. And I'm very grateful for all of those people for giving me that chance, right? It's huge.
Yeah. The people in our lives, the support, right? We as humans need the support of other people. It's right. We can go a long time without it. We can get a lot done, but at the end of the day, we need it, right?
Right. And it was the type of support too that was really critical. So family can say, "We support you. You can do it. You're great." But unless you're in fire service, unless you are also pursuing a full-time career and you're going to OFAI and you're writing these tasks and you're killing yourself, unless you've been there, you don't know what it takes.
Yeah.
Right. I can't tell you how many people have said to me, "Oh, you're going to get hired because you're a woman. Don't worry. You are just a shoo-in because you're a woman." I can tell you that is definitely not the case. In my experience, it's a lot harder as a woman because all of those standardized tests are just that. They are standardized. So if I weigh 145 pounds and my competition weighs 210 pounds, well, The pack that I'm wearing is the exact same pack that he is. The gear that I'm wearing is the exact same gear that he's wearing. So it's that weight ratio. I'm doing a lot more output. And I'm expected to keep up. Absolutely. And I should keep up because it is the same job. And I want to be held to that same standard. It should be standardized. But people don't necessarily know that unless they're in that role. And that was the support that I really needed. And once I found it, I really found that confidence that when you're grinding, like that word grind, like just grinding, you're wearing yourself down. Think about that word. Eventually, doesn't matter who you are, how mentally tough you are, eventually it will grind you down. And I found those people at that portion of time where I was ground down, and they really lifted me back up. And I will forever be grateful to them because that confidence that they gave me, that faith that they had in me, I really had to go on their faith because I had lost mine. And I remember looking at my captain one day and saying, I have so much respect for you. If you think that I can do this, then I'm going to do this based on your faith in me. Yeah, so that was definitely the turning point for me. And then moving on from there, departments have finally started to realize that turns out people still retire and, people still leave the job during COVID. Turns out that trucks are still out of service because they don't have emergency personnel to fill them. And despite the COVID restrictions of class sizes and social distancing, it's very difficult to social distance when you're a firefighter sitting beside someone on a truck or like you're breathing, like it's very difficult. I think departments have finally realized, guess we need to hire. So luckily departments have started to open up. And in the past 2 months, I have been throwing my applications in. And I am super pleased to tell you that I was just hired. And, saying that, I almost don't want to say it out loud because my start date's next week and I don't want to jinx it.
Yeah.
Because if I even have like
Congratulations.
a sniffle.
Congratulations.
Thanks, Jordan. Thank you. Yeah. It's been quite the journey. As soon as places started opening up, I was getting interview requests right, left, and center. And I was joking with one of the chiefs, and he said, Jess, when it rains, it pours.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, it was all because of COVID. And my captain kept saying to me, Jess, you're trying to get hired on a pandemic. You're not going to get hired because nobody is hiring. But that wasn't an okay excuse for me. I was like, no, there's something wrong.
Yeah. What was that like for you to get that acceptance? You just worked for 2 years. You literally, you worked your ass off. You put everything on the line. What was that like for you? Well,
to be honest with you, I still haven't celebrated because I have been in this weird holding pattern for so long now that I almost can't allow myself to accept it and celebrate. Like yesterday, I was on the treadmill in full gear doing the OFEI testing at my house, not because I need to, because technically I never need to go back to OFEI again, but because it's something now that I don't know how to stop.
Yeah.
and until I am there for that first day, until I'm wearing the uniform, I think that's when it'll hit me. When I'm sitting on the bumper of a truck, that'll be the day that I'm like, okay, I made it.
Mm-hmm.
And until then, I still feel so cautious. I've heard of people's classes being canceled due to COVID. I've heard of I was part of a recruitment that was completely scrapped due to COVID. There's a million challenges along the way that I haven't mentioned, but and last week I went from I got fitted for my bunker gear. If you can't be excited when you're getting fitted for bunker gear, you are a crazy person. I am totally a crazy person. But I know someone else who also just got hired at a different city. His start date is the same day as me, and he won't even talk about it. He will not acknowledge it. That's how fearful he is of something going wrong, because it is such a long road that when you finally get it, until I'm sitting on that truck and it's lights and sirens and we're on our way to a call, I almost can't believe it. Even going last week to the department, meeting the chief, meeting the captains, getting sized, meeting the other guys in my recruit class, it's still too good to be true. You know what I mean? Because I've wanted it so bad for so long. Yeah, it's emotional. I can tell you that when I graduate, that'll be the best feeling in the entire world. I've never worked for something so hard in my life and persevered through so much to achieve it.
Yeah, I hear you. I understand. Again, congratulations and thank you from me and from all of our listeners for being such an inspiration to say, you know what, she can do that. So I must be able to do a little bit more. Surely I can have a little bit of that in my life too. And I think that gift, it's a gift that keeps on giving, that you provide to people around you just by being you. And that's really something awesome. Yeah, so how has this challenge shaped your life? What has this done for your life?
Yeah, well, that's a huge question. I would say that I'm a completely different person at the end, and really this is only the beginning, but at the end of this chapter, I am a completely different person than when I signed that paperwork, that letter of resignation. This has been a huge transformational journey for me. It has broken me down mentally. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. It has really broken me down mentally and built me back up. It has broken me down physically. Stress that it has caused me, and not only me, but my family. Because when you're all in, there's not a lot of time for other things. And I really look forward to being able to prioritize my life a little bit better now. But it has really changed me in such a positive way in that failure is not an option. And when you really accept that, and that takes a lot of courage, to really look at yourself and say failure is not an option. You know, on my mirror in my bathroom that I get ready in every day, I have these Post-it notes up, and there's 3 Post-it notes, and it says, I can, I will, I must. And I repeat that to myself in the mirror every morning, because there was a point there where that's what it took for me to keep going. And that resilience that I have fostered now has really improved my life in ways that I can't even describe to you. I've always been a very confident person. I've always been a leader. I've always enjoyed intensity. I've always enjoyed challenges, but now I really understand when people say sky's the limit. I really, truly understand that. If you just hold on, if you just try harder, even when people say no, even when the world around you is trying to tell you stop, if you just hold on, you can do it. It's how much are you willing to suffer? Because on the other side of that suffering is that contentment piece. On the other side of that is achievement. And what does that achievement mean to you? And what is your why? Why do you want this so bad? You really have to know why you want it. Because when it comes down to it and you're in that suffering place and you're in that dark mental space, for me, that dark mental space usually showed up in the gym. And you're struggling through. That's where I do a lot of my thinking. What keeps you going? And I think the transition came from, in my corporate life, other things kept me going. Buying things, or what people thought of me, or achieving certain goals that will please my family, what will please society. These were the things that kept me going. But now it's what will please me. And not in a selfish way. I should clarify that. It's not all about me. It's more finding your own self-fulfillment. And it's you versus you. There are no excuses. It's not that you've been given a shitty upbringing. It's not that you don't have enough money. It's not that, no, it's you versus you. Don't use excuses. Everyone has got a crappy story to tell. Let me tell you. Everyone does. And it's finding that strength within yourself and whatever it takes. I listen to motivational speeches for 5 hours every single day on the construction site. Literally, I must have looked like a crazy person, but that's what it took for me to keep going at my lowest point. And now I've really internalized a lot of that, and I find that strength within myself, and I don't need to prove it to the world. Just because I have an unconventional career as a woman doesn't mean that I'm less of a mother. It doesn't mean that I'm less of a woman. I don't need to be unfeminine to work in a male-dominated career. And I don't need to prove myself, because that I've really gone through this huge transition, and I've proven myself to myself, and there's peace in that.
Yeah. When it stops being you against anything but
That's
you.
right.
Right.
And then it just becomes clearer, very much so.
Amazing. So this question is not for you, Jess, but for our listeners. And it's, what are you going to do? What are you going to do in your life now? And what would become possible for you if you applied these lessons? If you took even just one of the things that you heard from Jess today and started applying that in your life, what would become possible? What would change for you? And what's that worth to you?
How bad do you want it?
How bad do you want it? So Jess, if people want to follow your journey, if people want to reach out to you, how can they contact you?
Yeah, I have a private Instagram account, but if you guys want to add me, follow my journey through recruit class and life on the trucks, you guys can look me up. It's at Jessie Fights Fires on Instagram.
I'll put that in the description as well. I'll link it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So shoot me a message and I'll add you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jess. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, not at all. Thanks for your time, Jordan. I just encourage your listeners, if you're going through a rough situation, try to find that strength within yourself. No one else can lead the way except for you. I highly recommend a few books. There's Limitless. There's David Goggins' Can't Hurt Me. I mentioned Eric Thomas. He really helped me through a lot of the dark times. Yeah, there's Relentless. There's a bunch of books that I could recommend to you, but that's where I found a lot of my way forward, and that warrior mentality that I talked about, I would highly recommend.
Yeah, I'll put links to those books in the description as well, so that everything that we talk about is going to be in there, as well as Eric Thomas and the if you want it as bad as you want to breathe, that's when you'll succeed. I'll put a link to that.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Okay, if you found this podcast beneficial, you found this episode beneficial to you, please consider subscribing and sharing this episode with someone that you know so that they can benefit from it too, because these lessons that we explore here are beneficial to everybody, and you don't know what someone's going through. It might be the thing that they need at this moment right now. And we'll see you back here next week with another episode. Thanks again, Jess. Talk to you soon.
Thanks, Jordan.